Who's live? You or me?
No, all right. I think we're live now.
Right.
Okay, good evening. And we're back with another episode of Why Not Meets with MMI. So stick with us for another 45 minutes because we've got another formidable figure in the wine business who's waiting in the wings to talk to us. Our guest tonight started in the wine trade by bringing some French wines to the UK back in the 70s and 80s, had a very successful wine business in the UK, and then has one of the most stunning properties in South Africa. That is Mr. Paul Boutinot. We're very pleased to have him here. Paul, how are you?
I'm very well, thanks, Mark. Yep. The sun is shining in Manchester. I'm not in South Africa, unfortunately, but nonetheless, it's 28 degrees.
28 degrees is beautiful. And I was going to say, so can't really see much from there, but fortunately or unfortunately, you're not at the farm at the moment due to the COVID situation. So you're in Manchester, and it is unfortunately, I guess, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, the last time I was there was the end of February. We were halfway through vintage. Well, yeah, halfway through vintage. And then I was due to go back at the end of March, flew back to Manchester. And then it all kicked off. Lockdown, couldn't fly. And still can't fly, by the way. But hopefully, we're waiting for an announcement by our president, which we think might allow flights from the 1st of October.
Oh wow!
So if that's the case, I shall be out there.
Yeah, and I'll follow you because at that time of year, October through to March, is beautiful. You know.
Yeah, it's spring. The winds, it's not too windy, it's good. Yeah. The flowers are all out. Exactly. 900 different varieties of flowers.
Yeah, well, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. So how are things in South Africa? Because we know, we've been trying to support as much as possible. They've had it tough down there. You have had it tough down there because they not only banned sale of liquor domestically, but also exports. And then they allowed exports, but they kept with the ban on the domestic sale of wine and everything. So it must have had a huge impact on restaurants and sales of wine farms into the private clients and wine shops. So how is the situation down there?
Well, just to give you some background on the general South African wine industry, about 50% of South African wines are sold internally into the domestic market. That goes majority to supermarkets, but also to the restaurants and wine shops. So with the closing of the internal market, that for a lot of producers, some who sold more than 50% on the internal market, that was pretty devastating. Yeah. From that point of view, it was not good news for us, but we're primarily export driven. Yeah. So from to put a selfish hat on, if you like, we were affected, but not to the extent of a lot of our colleagues. But then, of course, for some reason that nobody has ever explained, they decided to ban exports. So that did affect us, and it affected all the other vineyards. So for 4 months, the ban has recently been lifted to the extent that you can now sell alcohol internally Monday to Thursday from between 10 o'clock and 5 o'clock.
Right.
And restaurants can open, but pretty well they have to close at 9 o'clock. There's a curfew after 10, so people, you've got to close about 9. And restaurants are slowly opening up, but it's a bit like everywhere, and I'm sure it's the same in Dubai. It's certainly the same in Britain. Although they had the 10 quid off, thanks to our channel.
The Eat Out to Help Out. That was a good...
restaurants, I don't think they've ever been busier Monday, Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, exactly. It was good to get out there early in the week. I mean, we didn't have anything like that here in the UAE, unfortunately, but it would have been great.
Yeah. So going back to South Africa, so the market's been very, very difficult. And cash flow has been king, like for everybody. The ability to pay your suppliers is obviously paramount, and also to pay the people who work in the business. But luckily, we've got some great agents throughout the world, MMI being one of the great agents who supported us. And so our sales have held up quite well on export. Not too bad. They have been affected.
Yeah.
And really, well, in terms of the general wine industry, quite a bit of inexpensive wine is being dumped at the moment.
Right.
By dumped, I mean sold below the cost of production.
Okay.
But they're not alone in that. I mean, the wine world is in
all of those big producing countries, Spain or Italy or
yeah.
Unfortunately.
So that's the background.
So what can we do to help? Obviously, what can people at home do to help? And I guess that is all about drinking South African wine. Great.
Yeah, I don't want people to go mad. Obviously, it's sensible, right? But I think South Africa is an emerging economy, and it's not really even emerging. It's been in the doldrums for at least 10 years for reasons that no doubt a lot of people know, primarily endemic corruption. And so it's been tough. It's been tough for the vine growers and the wine industry generally. And this is really, I think that there'll be some wineries who don't make it out of this, and who, I don't know.
Well, we keep our fingers crossed. Everybody.
So, I mean, enjoy the wines and buy the wines if you feel that they deserve to be bought, and drink them.
Yeah.
Hopefully enjoy them. And if you haven't tried South African wines before, try them, and I think you'll be pleased.
Yeah,
I mean, I flogged half the way around the world to a vineyard and a winery, and I didn't do that to make rubbish.
Exactly. Right. Well, that is a good segue into how it all started. And I'm going to bring up, this isn't like This Is Your Life, but I'm going to bring up a picture which I've seen a few times, and you can explain what this is and how this is, you starting in the wine trade.
Okay. Well, this is, so my parents, my father notably was, both my parents were in the restaurant business. And so since I was young, I was peeling potatoes and washing dishes and doing all the things that children of restaurants do. So I was brought up with a restaurant background and a food background. And I think looking back, that influenced me in many ways, because we, unusually for somebody from the 50s in England, we were encouraged, maybe isn't the right word, but we were expected to sort of criticize food.
Right.
Not necessarily in a bad way or whatever, but criticizing the true sense of the word. So if we'd be having Sunday lunch, myself and my sisters, or my father would say, "Oh, this beef's not very good this week," or whatever, or put too much pepper in it. Or so from an early age, it was quite normal to sort of, without thinking, analyze everything that I consumed.
Yeah.
And it was a subconscious thing, really, to do that. And to this day, I can't put anything in my mouth without thinking about it. So, but anyway, going forward, so I had a less than fantastic scholastic career with some very dodgy O levels and even dodgier A levels. So I didn't go to university, and I was sort of didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And my father was a very hardworking guy, and I was doing odd jobs here, there, and everywhere, some decorating and things. But he got fed up, and so one day he gave me 20 quid and told me to find somewhere else to live. So I think I was just about 19 then. So I got on a train to London and stayed at a friend's house who was Irish, great guy, Dennis, and got the taste for Guinness. And after about 10 days ran out of my 20 quid, less the train fare. So I had to get a job. So I got a job actually as a bricklayer's mate on the King's Road in Chelsea. So a hod carrier, carrying the bricks.
Yeah.
And after about 2 weeks, I was nearly dead. I couldn't get out of bed in the mornings. I was so exhausted. I thought, no, this is not for me. Yeah. So I got a job in a warehouse in Greenford, West London.
Okay.
The J. Lyons, who were in those days ice cream manufacturers.
Right.
But they also had some tea rooms in London for some of our older viewers, like my age. And they had some hotels as well. But they also had a very small wine business. So I got a job packing cases of wine in a warehouse, and then I was promoted to labelling. So my job, I had a big marble slab and a pot of glue and lots and lots and lots of different labels. And the orders would come in, and we'd have clean skin bottles. And depending upon what the order was, in those days, before we joined the European Economic Community, as it was, you could sell anything as anything in Britain. It's perfectly legal. There were no laws regarding what you put on the label.
And this would have been in the 70s or 80s?
This was up to 73 when we joined the EC. 73 or 74. Anyway, either or. So this was 71, 72.
Yeah.
So my job was basically, I got the order in, 6 bottles of Chateauneuf du Pape was to slap the labels on, 6 bottles of Gevrey Chambertin, and it was all the same wine. You did it by bottle shape, so that's how it's done. Anyway, I did that for about 5 months, and I was the fastest hand labeler you've ever seen. I think if I need it, I could go back to doing that as a job.
Well, we do it, so you can.
Anyway, then I got a job for a real wine company that actually sold in bottle what it said on the label.
Right.
In Victoria, an old-fashioned French importer of wines that sold things like Vauguet, Musigny, and really fine French wines.
Yeah.
And that's where I learned my trade. Effectively, I learned my trade there.
Yeah.
All aspects of the trade, including going to France and tasting from barrel, and so that's where I learned my trade.
And that's what you then started doing, right? You started going over to France and buying wine, just bringing it back to sell in the restaurant.
But in fact, it was very badly paid, and I went back to South Manchester because my parents were thinking of retiring, and they wanted me to run the restaurant.
Yeah.
And effectively, I did that for 18 months, but it was driving me mad. I mean, restaurants, you have to want to be in the restaurant business.
Yeah.
And it was, I found it very interesting, and it was a good challenge. But after 18 months, I said, no, this is too hard for me. I need an easier life. So I started my wine business. And I started my wine business effectively. I found a few producers, 1 or 2 I'd already known, but then some new ones, and started bringing the wines in, and just slowly developed it. Started as a one-man band with a Citroen Safari, and just developed it, and was really lucky because it was about the beginning of the wine explosion in the United Kingdom.
Mm.
It had already started.
What was the wine like in the UK? At that point, before
at that point, the biggest
a lot of German wines.
Yeah, no, at that point, the early 70s. Sorry, this was late 70s by then. German white, medium sweet wine was the biggest seller, and everybody said, "This is the future." This is blah blah blah. Just like in the 80s or 90s, they said Australia is the future, and then Chile is the future. Something is always the future, but of course it never is. It's part of a big picture in reality. Thankfully, I've just come back from Germany, actually, and thankfully Germany has refound its place in the world with fantastic wines. But that was the main market, and France was diminishing. But anyway, I only really knew about French wines. And apart from doing Wine and Spirit Education Trust and tasting a few chocolate beer in Auslese in 1959 for J. Crumb, I didn't know much else. So I stuck to French wines really for quite a long time, and slowly built up the business, and then also started to produce wines in France.
Yeah, in France and in Italy, right?
Later on. Yeah. Because I thought in the end, to really make wines that, especially at the lower price level, that differentiate themselves in the market, you have to actually start from the grape. And everything was becoming very technological in those days. In the 80s, everything was stainless steel, enzymes, culture, temperature control. It was all moving. It had moved, in fact, in that direction.
Yeah.
Especially at the lower end, but also at the top end. You know, all the people from university were coming out and saying wood is terrible and all of, you know. And I didn't agree, so I wanted to make wines the way I like wines, which was basically not changing the profile of the grape too much. So that's what I did. So we produce wines for a small minority of people, effectively. But luckily, that small minority, and I'm not talking about price level, because some were relative, but stylistically. But luckily, we found enough people who like the same type of wine. Yeah. And still doing it today.
Yeah, great. And then obviously that like you say grew and grew. In Boutinot wines is still a big force to be reckoned with in the UK wine business, certainly for on-trade, new exports, and some of those wines are available in the UAE. But you saw an exit strategy out of that, and you decided you traveled the world and you discovered this beautiful site in South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to have a vineyard, unless you inherit it, if you inherit it, it's another matter. Or if you're a banker or maybe in high tech stuff, and you want a hobby and something to talk to your friends about, that's different. But if you, outside of those two scenarios, there is no point in having a vineyard unless you can grow grapes that you can't buy.
For sure.
You're wasting your time. You may as well buy grapes. It's cheaper, a lot cheaper to buy grapes than grow them. I know that sounds weird, and I'm not going to explain the reason now because it goes on and on, but it is. But to produce really grapes that are really distinctive, it's very unusual. And to produce grapes that are very distinctive, you need a very unusual site on which the vines are grown.
For sure.
So, and that's why, there's only one Chambertin, there's only one Musigny, there's only one Château-Latour, there's only one Barolo, La Boussière, or, these are very restricted areas. And the vineyard next door cannot make as good wine. I mean, literally because the soil structure changes slightly, or it may have a marginally different microclimate for various reasons.
Yeah.
So there are very few areas discovered in the world that can make fine wine.
Yeah.
And by fine wine, basically you need the grapes to be in perfect balance before you start transforming the grape into wine.
Right. Yeah.
So you have to have a situation where the grape, you don't have to do anything to the grape. I mean, I'm not saying you're lazy about it, because you do have to think.
Yeah.
But you don't have to start adjusting temperature. You don't have to start adding enzymes. You can use the natural yeast on the grape skin. You don't have to start adding flavors or manipulating the flavor profile of the grape to make something that's acceptable.
Yeah.
You just have to nurse the grape through the process, the winemaking process.
For sure. Yeah. I guess
for that you need a particular site.
Yeah, to do that, it's the site, it's the soil, and it's how you look after it and how you farm it. And we'll come on to that in a minute, because a big part of your philosophy is obviously the biodynamics and the organics and working with nature.
Yeah, just before you come to the farming aspects, I think the first the first thing you've got to look at is climate, because you pretty well not be able to change the climate. I know, mankind is trying.
It's trying its hardest, yeah.
But well, apart from Mr. Trump, of course. But you can't fight climate. And whatever the given climate is, if you're in a very good area to produce grapes, the climate of that area works for some grapes, but it doesn't work for all grapes.
Yeah.
You can pretty well split the grape world in two. One is continental grapes, and the other one is I'll call it Mediterranean or more even climate grapes.
Okay.
So continental grapes fundamentally need a cold winter, and they need a warm to a hottish summer.
Yeah.
So for that, you've got Burgundy, you've got the Mosel, you've got various areas, you've got Barolo, freezing cold winters because So you've got Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Nebbiolo, various grape varieties that need that sort of climate.
Yeah.
So if you're in our situation overlooking the sea, where we have mild winters generally, we're not a continental climate. So there's no point in us planting Pinot Noir or Chardonnay. We'd make good Pinot Noir, we'd make good Chardonnay, but we wouldn't make outstanding wine. And also the vines would suffer because they don't easily go into dormancy. So you would stress the vines too much and they'd die. So there are certain grape varieties you can plant, and the climate determines that.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you've got soil structure.
Yeah.
And we've got a climate that is, because of where we are, we're 300 meters above False Bay, which gives onto the Atlantic, which gives onto the Antarctic. We have a peculiar climate, and the wind comes in every afternoon during spring and summer.
It
I'm
blows.
going to put a picture up. There we go.
Yeah.
So you can see we're in an amphitheatre 300 meters above False Bay, and the wind, we're southwest facing in an amphitheatre. So in fact, we've got south facing vines, southwest, west, east, and some north. They all go around, but they're all affected by the wind that comes in from the ocean. And that wind that comes in from the ocean is cold.
Yeah.
You're up at 300 meters. The wind comes in at midday, 20 to 30 kilometers an hour from the Antarctic.
Yeah.
I don't know if, I'm sure some people have put their toes in the water in False Bay, in that area. And the height of summer, the water is 12, 13 degrees Celsius.
Fresh.
And that's why we've got a peculiar climate. And because of that peculiar climate, we can produce wines that are very distinctive. Really, we have a climate that enables us to produce completely ripe grapes with high acidity, without too much alcohol, with very low yields because of the winds, which constantly stress the vines. And we also have a very long summer.
Yeah.
So although we're not very hot, normally we don't go above 30 degrees Celsius. So we're cooler than the Loire Valley.
Yeah.
But it goes on. So we get an extra 30 days of warm days. So we can
to the European.
We can ripen Cabernet Franc, but we can ripen Mourvèdre as well.
Well, it's good that you should say that, because the first wine that I wanted to have a look at was your beautiful rosé, which is made from Mourvèdre, which is a great variety that has its home firmly rooted in Bondol, where it's blended to make those great rosés. So of course it would be a fantastic option for your rosé. And you grow quite a lot of Mourvèdre on the farm, right? You have decent.
Yeah, we've got about at the moment we've got about 18 hectares planted.
Right.
It's our biggest planting of red grape, and the reason for that is we're in a perfect position for Mourvèdre. I won't. The growers of Mourvèdre say Mourvèdre has to see the sea.
Right.
And the reason for that is it's not heat that ripens Mourvèdre. So the further inland you go, the worse the Mourvèdre, basically. the more difficult it is to ripen, because Mourvedre is ripened by humidity in the atmosphere, which comes in from the sea, and it has an effect on the leaves, which has an effect on which allows the vine to ripen fully without going to high levels of alcohol. Okay. As you go further inland, you need higher temperatures to ripen it, and you get more rustic styles of Mourvedre, but we get an elegant style of Mourvedre.
Yeah, absolutely. So this is the Cape Coral Rosé.
That's baby. So I'll tell you how it's made. So we pick all our grapes a whole bunch picked, so they're picked by hand. We have a champagne press, which is the gentlest type of press, because all our whites and our rosés, we don't want extraction of the skins. We want very pure juice, so we use a champagne press, which is the gentlest press you can have. So we put them in a whole bunch, and we press very, very gently. We then just let the must decant for about 12 to 24 hours at about 12 degrees Celsius. Yeah. And then the must goes into big old oak, 900 litre fermenters. So the oak gives no flavour whatsoever. We don't put temperature control on. Oh, we're getting a picture, maybe.
Yeah, I'm just going to go.
Oh, on to biodynamics. Oh, there we go. So they're the fermenters. Mainly these fermenters are used for red wines, and we take the tops off. I'll come on to that later. But for the rosé, we put the top on, and it's a natural fermentation. We add nothing. So it takes about 6 months to ferment. If you add cultured yeast, you can ferment in 10 days. Yeah, because it's a natural fermentation, it takes about 6 months to ferment.
Yeah.
And after about 8 to 9 months, it remains on the lees. We bottle it. We add a bit of sulfur just before bottling. One of the advantages to doing a long fermentation and leaving on the lees is you don't have to add any sulfur to the wine until you're ready to bottle. Right. So the sulfur levels are very, very low on our wines.
Yeah. And sulfur, obviously, people relate to, sulfur is,
yeah, I don't like sulfur personally. So, but as a byproduct of the way we make the wines, we have very low sulfur levels.
Yeah.
As well. So I'll join
you. Is that this beautiful rosé that has great texture and great mouthfeel to it, lovely bright fruit characteristics, and that minerality. It's absolutely fantastic.
And it's got good length, and it's a great food. I mean, you can drink it on its own, obviously, but it's actually a very good food wine. It goes with a really you can have it with a steak if you want. I mean, that's a bit extreme, but you can.
Yeah,
but it's
because
great.
I guess you do that whole bunch of press that gives it that little bit of extra tannin.
Well, it's not. Well, it's Mourvedre as well. Is quite. Most rosés are made from Cinsault or even Grenache or whatever, which are relatively thin-skinned grapes. Mourvedre is not a thin-skinned grape.
Okay.
So, yeah, but Mourvedre's got normally quite good acidity as a grape, so it's got good freshness. The thing about Mourvedre, though, when you're making most Bondols are not made from 100% Mourvedre. They put Grenache and Cinsault in. This is 100% Mourvedre. And we can do it because we're very elegant.
Yeah.
Our style of Mourvedre is very elegant. But really, it's only after about 18 months that the wine really starts to be very good. I mean, we've now just moved on to 2020, which is lovely to drink, but it'll be a lot better in 9-10 months than it is now. So our rosés you can keep for 5, 6, 7, 8 years. I know. Nobody's going. I mean, we do for interest, but they can be. But I think this is really drinking well now. I actually opened that last night. Our wines get better when they've been open for a day or two.
And is that because of the way that you make them? You make them in quite a oxidative.
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned way. It's oxidative winemaking. They're made so that when they're open and left to the air, they don't oxidize. They're not primary aroma wines for a start. So aromas start to come out. So I always like, with our whites and our rosé, I always like to either decant them for 3 or 4 hours beforehand, or alternatively have a glass, leave it in the fridge. And the other thing is, it is better. You can drink at whatever temperature you like, but our white wines and rosés are better drunk around 12 degrees. So this is actually about 12 degrees now.
Not straight out of the fridge.
Not straight out of the fridge. I mean, you can, but you'll find as the wine warms up, it improves. So if you've got it very cold, if there are any people listening to this and watching this,
they are. I'll say hi to a couple.
There's two.
Hi to Bridget Lloyd.
Bridget.
D Trainer. Hello from Zanzibar, from Catherine. We've got quite a few people watching. So hi everyone.
So listen, if you've got a few glasses, don't finish this glass. If it's cold in your glass at the moment, just leave it. Yeah. Put it to one side, or leave the bottle for later. Let it warm up a bit. And I mean, the basic truth about white and rosé wine is that the worse the wine, the colder it has to be.
Yeah.
And the better the wine, the warmer it has to be.
Yeah.
Really, if wines are really well made, they should be drunk 10, 12. And if they're really good white wines, you can drink them at 15 to 18 degrees.
For sure.
Really, when you really get to the top.
Yeah.
So
I think it's a great rosé and a great food rosé, and therefore great for restaurants. And it's something different, a different rosé that people often nowadays gravitate towards Provence or to Loire or wherever it might be. But this is a fantastic rosé to look at. And one of the things that I like about the way you describe your wines is being honest wines. So what do you mean when you say that your wines are honest?
Well, it's a bit pretentious, I suppose, in a way, but I mean, they're not pretending to be anything other than they are. They are what they are.
Yeah.
And they won't suit everybody. Our wines have never suited everybody, and they most probably don't suit the majority of people.
Yeah.
But they are a reflection of the vineyard, the grape, and they're a reflection of what we are. Don't lie about wine.
No, well, that's true, and I think it's important. People nowadays, more and more so, it's becoming more important. That provenance, that kind of traceability. Knowing what you're eating, knowing what you're drinking, and it's a very valid point to know that what goes in, or in this case doesn't go into the wines that you make. And like I touched on earlier, I guess a big element of that is the biodynamics, in the way that you work in the vineyard. But also So with the biodynamics, when you bought Vartecleuve and you took over Vartecleuve, how was Vartecleuve at that point?
At that point, it was a track that you couldn't drive up. It was a track going up from the low road, Solaris Pass Road, which is at about 5 meters above sea level.
Yeah. That
wound its way up through a kloof, means ravine, through a ravine, and then all of a sudden opened out into this amphitheatre. And the ravine and also the amphitheatre mainly was planted with Australian blue gums. Blue gum trees were widely planted in South Africa because they grew quickly. They could be used to make poles for construction and so on. So eucalyptus is one example. So there are lots of eucalyptus trees. And there's been a big push in South Africa over the past 20 years to take out what they call alien, not only trees, but alien flora.
Focus on the natural or the native.
The native flora is called fynbos, effectively. And that's the most diverse. It's the most diverse flower base in the world. There are 900 species in the Western Cape, which are more than in the whole of Europe. In fact, maybe the rest of the world put together. So it's incredibly diverse. And what we wanted to do, first of all, was to take out all the blue gums, apart from anything else, apart from the principle of reintroducing fynbos. They poison the soil, and they drink water, like a dying man in the desert. You know, so it's bad all around. So and also where the Scarpenberg has the lowest rainfall in the wine growing areas anyway, the Western Cape. So where we are in the Scarpenberg has half the average rainfall of other areas in Stellenbosch. So we need whatever rain falls to remain in the ground and not be soaked up. So the first job we had was to take out the aliens, trees, and to slowly bring back fynbos. So we've got over 100 hectares of fynbos now, which means that lots of animals, small animals have started to come back, caracals, all sorts of animals have started to come back. The small birds have started to come back. Not started, they are fully back now, but they did start. We've got, beehives, it's a living organism now.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, that starts in the soil, and you create this kind of, circle of life, which obviously is a wine of yours. I remember Louis explaining it to me, that kind of very significant part when you start getting those leopards or, those mountain cats coming into the vineyards and stuff that haven't been for a long time. And it just creates a symbiotic or a mutually beneficial environment for the vine to grow, and for natural predators of it encourages natural predators of animals that are vectors for disease. So we started this way, and we're one of the champions of biodiversity in South. And we believe in it inherently, and it's actually. There are many tenets to biodynamics. A lot of people who sort of know about biodynamics, they think about, doing things by the movements of the moon and stars, which is true. That is one aspect of it, but it is only one aspect. And that's what tends to be and spraying with certain types of natural solutions like 500 and 501. But those are only one aspect of biodynamics. Biodynamics is actually far more comprehensive than that. And biodiversity is critical to biodynamics. Yeah, absolutely.
The other thing that's critical for biodynamics, true biodynamics, if you can do it, and of course a lot of people can't, because they're not in the situation to, but we can. We call Waterkloof a farm. We don't call it a vineyard. It's a farm. And a true farm, traditionally, if you're an arable farm, you always had animals. You had farm animals if you're an arable farm. And similarly, if you were farming animals, you would have certain sectors which were arable, because you need the manure, you need the grazing of the sheep to keep down weeds. You need it. So So we have a farm. We have Nguni cattle, which are the indigenous cattle. We have sheep. We have chickens. We've got ducks, and all of them have a purpose within the whole farm environment. We make cheese, and the whey from the cheese is used as a natural antibiotic to use in the compost, but also to use as a spray on the vines. It's all integrated.
Amazing place to visit, because you do have all these different elements, and especially if Christian is there and he can take you out and explain everything. And yeah, it's great to see everything having its part and doing its bit. Yeah, amazing. I love it. Right, we're going to look at another wine.
Right.
And,
okay. So in some ways, I would normally have the seriously cool Chenin before the Cape Coral, but then it would have meant the Cape Coral afterwards and then the Sauvignon Blanc. That's a bit weird. So we had the Cape Coral first. So seriously cool Chenin.
Seriously cool Chenin. And I'm going to say hi to Alex Street, who says, "Hi, Paul, having to make do with the False Bay Whole Bunch Rosé tonight. But
that's
to be
good.
fair, it's no difficulty." And he's absolutely right. It's a beautiful.
It's really, really good. Yeah, I mean, we make another range of wines which are for sort of everyday drinking, but they're you know, but they're very good wines. They're called False Bay. They're not waterproof wines. You know, they have some waterproof wines in them, but they're basically grapes that we source from other vineyards. So we don't link it directly with waterproof. But nonetheless, we say that they're everyday drinking wines for people who really like wine. So Alec, enjoy your False Bay Rosé.
So, and I'm going to say hi to Mark, who's watching in Oxfordshire, but he says it's not so sunny. So sorry about that. It's sunny in Manchester. It's sunny in Dubai. But get some of these beautiful wines from MMI or wherever you can get them, and that'll bring some sunshine into your glass and your home. Tell us about the Seriously Cool.
So Seriously Cool, we do two Seriously Cool wines, one the Chenin Blanc, one the Sanso. But I'll just talk about Chenin Blanc. And the strapline on the back says, "Drink me cool, but take me seriously." And in the case of this wine, why Seriously Cool? We want to try and ask people not to drink our wines too cold, basically. So cool, not cold. That's effectively it. And in the case of the Sanso, cool, not warm.
Yeah.
But that's for another day.
A slightly chilled red, which is
slightly,
you know, really, really good. It's something that you don't see quite often on its own as Sanso. So
the Seriously Cool Chenin Blanc is largely from our blocks of vines at the bottom of the vineyard, and the soil is more productive because there's silt at the bottom of the bottom area of the vineyard. There's silt, so it's a more productive soil. So we don't get high yields. We get very, very low yields generally, but we get higher yields, and it produces Chenin Blanc grapes that are more fruit driven, more easy drinking style, rather than serious style of circumstance Chenin Blanc. The wine is fermented in concrete eggs and some old oak 600-litre barrels. So they're old oak. There's no flavour of oak. They're large barrels with thick staves. So there's very slow oxygenation. So basically, it's for freshness and fruit, but nonetheless with a touch of seriousness. I haven't drunk this for a while, actually. So I've just opened this because this is actually a wine you don't need to. It's 18, so it's 2.5 years old now. You don't need to decant this. You don't need to faff around. You can drink this cold if you want, entirely up to you, because it's fine at 4 degrees from the fridge. But you don't need. This is, you unscrew it, pour it, drink it.
This is it. As I've got there.
So it's even on the nose. It's quite fresh. Actually, I haven't drunk this for about 9 months or even 12 months. And it's lovely. It's lovely. I'm not
it's going to be hanging around.
It's one of the world's great wines. No, it isn't. It's absolutely delicious. It's got lovely acidity. And again, we're lucky because we don't have to acidify our wines because of the natural acidity, because of the climate and the stress on the vines from the wind. So we have high acid levels, natural acids as opposed to ascorbic or tartaric.
You know what you get in all of your wines is like you said with the grapes, is this wonderful balance. You know, it's really important for good wines. You know. Wines that you want to drink is that drinkability. You know, you can just sipping it, and it, you know.
They have to finish with a purity, and with a finish that makes you want to go back. And even at this level, which is, it's not cheap, but it's not expensive. So even at this level, you want some interest in the wine that makes you go back. You don't want a wine that after the first taste, it's okay, the next taste, and slowly it goes downhill. You want it to at least hold the interest and preferably get more and more interesting. Yeah.
And obviously, Chenin Blanc is South Africa's kind of, key white varietal, or in terms of volume, but also, people always associate South Africa with making good Chenin Blanc, and it is a great variety that is quite versatile, certainly from a stylistically, but also a food match point of view. And I think this is a great wine for both drinking at home and drinking in restaurants. Yeah,
South African Chenin Blanc, I think you can split it in two. If in terms of styles, normally, one is the Chenin from the interior, say the Swartland area.
Yeah. Which
tends to be, it's a hotter area. And Chenin does hold its acidity, but it's a hotter area. So it tends to be, and I am generalizing because there are pockets that are different, but in generality, you've got a more honeyed character, you've got a richer character to the wines. As you come down to the coast, and we're an extreme example. Many years ago, in 1997, I took part in a seminar in South Africa, and I was a speaker, and I'm a lousy speaker, but it was on Chenin Blanc. And the one thing I wanted to impart was that to make really good Chenin, you have to use your best vineyards.
Yeah.
And the best vineyards are the south-facing vineyards because they're facing away from the sun. And they're your coolest vineyards. So where you plant your best Chardonnays and your best Sauvignon Blancs, you need to plant your Chenins. And so I said that in 1997, and I said it preferably as close to the coast as you can get. So when I got Waterkloof and planted it, I thought, well, I'd better keep to my word. So higher up in some of our best blocks, we've got Chenin Blanc planted.
Yeah, fantastic.
So I didn't want people to remind me of what I'd said, 10 years or 20 years later, and said, well, you didn't do what you said. But when you get fresher wines, wines with more linearity, more minerality, use that word, overused word, but nonetheless it's true. And goes better with fish.
Okay.
This will go very well with fish.
Yeah.
You could have it with other things as well, but this would be really nice with mackerel or salmon or something like that.
Yeah, beautiful. So when did you first start making wine in South Africa, Paul?
I went over, I think it was 93. When they released Nelson Mandela from prison, I thought, well, I'll go over and have a look. So I went over and had a look around, and I went around vineyards, not actually then on the coast, more in the Paarl area and the Paardenburg area.
Yeah.
And I was tasting, it was just before the vintage, and I was tasting grapes, and I thought, God, these are really good grapes.
Yeah.
So I came to an agreement with a largish, co-op at the time, that that we would represent them in the UK if they would make the wine the way I wanted.
Okay.
And Altus LaRue, a great guy, was then and he said, yeah. And not only did he say yes, I believed he would do it as well. I believe he would actually do it. So we went round, and it was for about a week around all their vineyard sites, and we chose vineyard sites for Chenin, for some Syrah, Pinotage, various great varieties, primarily though Chenin. I was concentrating on Chenin. And I asked them to vinify them without cultured yeast. They nearly had a heart attack because they'd been using cultured yeast, and they come out with everything. And they said it would be a disaster. And the professor had told them you get all sorts of off flavors and stuff.
Yeah.
Anyway, and also without temperature control, or at least to cap the temperature at 20, because most commercial white wine, as you know, is fermented at 12 degrees Celsius. So to create primary aromas, really. Anyway, they said they would, and they did, and it was really good. It was really good. So that's how I started.
Yeah.
And in '97, I started my own company over there, sourcing grapes and completely controlling vinification in other cellars, but completely controlling vinification. And I'd been looking for a vineyard site for ages, and then found this vineyard site.
Yeah.
So the first vintage we bought it in October 2003, but we didn't do the 2004. We sold the grapes to a neighbour.
Yeah.
2005 was the first vintage, which we fermented in somebody else's cellar with our own equipment. We had our own press, our own wooden fermenter for the red, open top wooden for the reds, but in somebody else's cellar. And then we built our cellar, which was ready for 2009 vintage.
Yeah, and I mean the cellar and the restaurant and the tasting room you have at Waterkloof is stunning. I mean the building from a design and architectural point of view, it's stunning. Inside, it's stunning. It's beautiful, and the food in the restaurant is just stunning. There's that, and the view is also stunning. So I think it's a possible contender for where my ashes might go if ever I was pass away. Anyway, we're not going to talk.
If that is the case, we will welcome your family whenever they want to visit to pay their respects.
Yeah, no, and everybody must go and have a look at the the whole thing about it's such a great.
Listen, if anybody if there's anybody still out there, if you'd ever like to visit, please drop MMI or the UK agent or Dutch agent or whatever an email, and we'll organise a nice visit for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, Sauvignon Blanc.
Yes. So Sauvignon Blanc.
I took your advice and I put it in a little decanter.
Ah, good.
So I decanted this about an hour ago, and I'm going to taste it.
Okay, so once we get to our serious white wines, especially when they're young, when they get older, it's not so necessary. But basically, they're too young, and they need to be oxygenated. They need to breathe, to develop, because they're quite close to begin with.
Yeah.
2019 was a year of good acidity, high acidity. Actually, I've got the acid levels here somewhere. I can never remember technical things. Yeah, it was about 7 grams of acid, so it's quite high, sort of acid of a sort of German wine. But it's got a lot of, the yields are very low. We get about 3.5 tons an hectare, 23, 24 hectolitres per hectare, which is 1/3 the yield you get in Sancerre, for example, or Puy-Fumé. So we've got a lot of concentration. I actually opened this 2 days ago, and there's that left. It's about 14 degrees now.
This is the Sauvignon Blanc, 2019.
This again is whole bunch pressed. Goes into old oak barrels, 600-litre barrels, so they're big with thick staves, very low oxygenation.
Yeah.
There's no oak character at all. These are barrels that are 7, 8, 9, 10 years old. They're vessels to do the fermentation. Fermentation is the 2020 is just finishing. It's just finished. The 19, I can't remember when it finished, but they normally takes about between 6 and 8 months to ferment, and we normally bottle after about 9 months.
Right.
So we're bottling the 20 in October.
Okay.
We're out of 19 now. We have none left. We're bottling the 20 in October.
Yeah, fantastic.
So Sauvignon's a bit like Merlot. Not obviously it's different colour. I don't mean style or anything, but they're two grapes that make a whole sea of. I'll be kind.
I was waiting.
A whole sea of commercial wine.
Yeah, absolutely.
And they're only in a few spots in the world do they make truly complex world standard wine. So it's a bit like Merlot, I'm not having a go, but there are certain countries that make millions and millions of bottles of perfectly acceptable drinking red wine.
Yeah.
But if you want really good Merlot, basically you go to Pomerol or you go to Saint-Emilion. And there will be one or two other little spots in the world, so let's not be too exclusive. But it's very, to make great wine from Merlot, it's incredibly site specific.
Yeah.
And Sauvignon Blanc is exactly the same. It is to make a wine that is serious. When I arrived here today in a hurry, I've come back to my old company because our Wi-Fi at home is kaput. So I had to drive here quickly. And I met one of my old colleagues, Graham, and he just said, "You know the wine of the lockdown for me?" I said, "No, what was it?" He said, "I opened a bottle of Vaucluse Sauvignon Blanc, 2009.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "Buy it." He said, "That was amazing." And funny enough, I opened one with Louis about 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
We've got about 4 or 5 bottles left. And it's still not ready. It needs another 10 years. Vaucluse Sauvignon Blanc is our top wine, our top circumstance is the one that's the next step down.
Yeah.
So this 2019, don't think of it as a Sauvignon. Don't certainly get out of your mind any idea of New Zealand Sauvignon.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Maybe think of Puy Fumé, top Puy Fumés, possibly. I mean, it's different in style, but in terms of texture and length, think of that. And it's a wine that you can keep it for 10 years if you want, keep it for as long as you want. I think it'll start to be I drink it now because I like young wines and, I drink it now, but in 3 years it could be really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we do very well with this because, again, it's something different. So, like you said, there's a lot of commercial Sauvignon Blanc, but this is different. It's not New Zealand. It's like similarities to Arthur. And
sort of stone character. It's got sort of stony character. It's like licking a pebble.
Yeah, and it's very different to a lot of South African Sauvignons, which tend to can have a lot of green pepper characters and
for whatever reason, and there's no point, but. We have neighbours who grow Sauvignon grapes, and we buy grapes from neighbours to go into things like False Bay and so on.
Yeah.
And they're on the Skarpenberg, and we make it in exactly the same way as we make this. There's no difference in the way we make it, but they're different. There is no comparison.
Yeah.
There's no comparison. And certainly, general South African Sauvignon Blanc it can be very nice wine. It can be very drinkable wine, and sometimes not very nice. Like everywhere.
Yeah.
There's the good, the bad, the ugly in every country, and I'm not going to say France, Italy, or wherever. But it is. I have never tasted Sauvignon Blanc from South Africa that tastes like this.
Yeah. No, I agree.
I'm not talking about quality. I'm talking about the style of the wine.
Yeah, stylistically,
there's some very good Sauvignon Blancs in South Africa.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is. I should mention that actually for us, or this weekend is Braai Day, Heritage Day in South Africa. So perfect wines for grabbing and enjoying at your braai over the weekend. And we have MMI 20% off selected wines, including False Bay and Circumstance. So
do you deliver to Manchester?
Unfortunately not, but you need to make a call to your buddies in that office there and see if they can.
Yeah, I think it's all right. It's all right.
Yeah. It's 28 degrees in Manchester. Everybody will be in shorts, t-shirt, or probably not even a t-shirt. Barbecues out and.
Oh, they will. Well, Manchester, they have a barbecue out when it's 16 degrees.
Yeah, exactly. So next weekend, sorry, not this weekend, next weekend.
Oh, it's next weekend.
From today until the 26th at MMI stores, we'll have 20% off the False Bay wines and the Circumstance range, amongst some others. So that's great. At MMI and our Hammer Cellar. Now, one of the things I love about South African wines is the Rhone style varietals, and in particular, I think Syrah is or should be red grape variety for South Africa, because it grows very well all over, lots of different parts, you know, from Swartland or to where you are, and
absolutely.
And Stellenbosch is a beautiful grape variety, and I absolutely love it. And I have a bottle here of your Circumstance 2016, which we are currently on at the moment. I think you've got a newer vintage out, but this is what we have here, and it's absolutely delicious.
Well, I'm now going to, you know, I said never lie about wine, so I'm not going to lie about wine. I haven't got any 16 at home. We've obviously still got some at Vartiglu. So I haven't, in my mind, I remember how it tastes, so I'll try and blag it. Try and bluff it. But I did open a bottle of 17 last night, which is actually completely is different stylistically to the 16. Not stylistically, but from depth, it's different. So I'd be interested in your view on the 16. Now, I'll tell you about the 16. 16 generally in South Africa, not an easy vintage. And most people didn't make, or they tell me they didn't make their best wines in 16. I'm putting it kindly.
Yeah.
We were happy with our 16s. And I think it's partly because of our peculiar climate, but we were actually happy with our 16s. But this Syrah is from one block of vines. It's from block 11, which is below the restaurant. I don't know if you can get that picture back up, but it might show that block. If you can't, it doesn't matter. So it's below the restaurant. Is that what's going to come up? No. Okay. Well, no. Okay. If you go back to the restaurant, right? Well, okay. Oh, you keep flicking right. Yeah. So it's that. I'm pointing at. There are vines directly below the restaurant. You can see them, and then there's Fynbos beyond that.
Yeah.
So that's our Syrah slope. It's on It's on granite. Our farm is two different soil structures generally. It's more complex than that, but in general, it's either granitic or it's shale, compact shale with mica and silica as well. And this is on granite, and it makes a wine that's very Northern Rhone-like, quite elegant. Not at all like Swartland's Shiraz. That's why we call it Syrah, really. But it's not at all like Swartland's Shiraz. Or Barossa, or it's not that style of wine at all. It's a more minerally again. It's a more perfumed wine, if you like. It is. Yeah. Now the 16 is, I guess now, and you can tell me, I guess now it's really drinking well.
It is.
Because it was never
very supple tannin.
Very supple tannins. Yeah. It's 12.5% alcohol, and my guess is it's really a lovely drink now.
Yeah,
it was never going to
bright fruit character, almost. Like there was some kind of carbonic maceration in it.
No, there isn't. It's whole bunch.
It's got that kind of. It's really pretty nose to it, actually.
Yeah. It's very pretty, and we most probably, and it's easy in hindsight, we most probably picked a few days too early.
Right.
And because of that, you've got that prettiness, you've got that drinkability now.
Yeah.
I mean, it's most probably lovely now.
It is. Again, I don't think it'll last very long.
No, and it's unusual for us because normally our red wines would last for 10, 15, 20 years. But the 16 Syrah, not Cabernet Franc, not Merlot, but the Syrah, because we most probably picked it maybe 5 days too early, has made a wine that you want to open now and drink and really enjoy it, because it's going to be just a lovely drink now.
It will be, and I think for those people who think they know Sauvignon Blanc because they drink New Zealand, try the Sauvignon Blanc, and people that drink Australian Shiraz and think they know Shiraz, this is a completely different beast. And it's even different. It's got that similarities more to the Rhone Valley, like you say.
It's more like a Saint Joseph. I think if I'm going to liken it to anything, it's like a Saint Joseph. It's the most elegant of all the Northern Rhone
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. I think as all of your wines are, you know, I think it's really interesting wines. You know, I love that, like you say, that honest wines, you know, that really make you think about what you're tasting and what you're drinking, you know, and want to drink more and understand a little bit more. And then you see where it comes from, and it really kind of you can understand why it tastes like it does.
I think for us at Varticliffe, the satisfying thing is that we will get better and better and better. So
yeah.
there is no doubt the vines will get older. We're learning something every year because we don't make our wines in a standard way where, you know, so we are, you know, we're rectifying small errors maybe in what we do. And trying to improve every year. So, and there's lots of improvement to go.
Yeah.
And the other thing is, for me, the wines can only come from Varticliffe.
Yeah.
You know, I liken, say, that Syrah to San Josef, but it isn't really like San Josef. It's like Varticliffe Syrah. Yeah. It can't come from anywhere else. It can only come from Varticliffe.
Yeah.
And it's very site specific.
Yeah, absolutely. And what a beautiful site. And like I say, again, you know, if you're when you're able to from Dubai, I can't wait until those flights to get down to Cape Town again, or from wherever in the world. You got to get down there and you got to see it. It's amazing.
Yeah, we're waiting for our president. He's going to apparently make an announcement tonight, but we're hoping that flights will be allowed in from the 1st of October.
Fingers crossed.
So.
All right. Well, Paul, we've been chatting here for just a little over an hour.
Oh my God!
Yeah.
No wonder there's nobody left watching.
It's been an absolute pleasure for me talking to you about these wonderful wines that we've worked with in the UAE for over close to 10 years or over 10 years probably.
Yeah.
We love having you over here. We love having Louis over here, and also in Tanzania and Zanzibar and you know, Sri Lanka. We're working with Maldives, all these beautiful places. So when you can get out and about, and when Louis can get out and about, who of course we talk about Louis is your son. People don't realise, but yeah. So hi Louis, and I want to thank you again, Paul, for taking the time to join us on Wine Not Meats with M&I. I'm sure people at home have loved it, and yeah,
thanks for the opportunity, and I'll let everybody enjoy the wines in the peace of their homes, and have a great evening to everyone.
All right. Thanks a lot, guys.